Hi pandas! Gather round, for it is story time! I have got a request. One of my majorly viewed videos on my channel is White-Eyed Children. And somebody requested for me to make a video on Black-Eyed Children. So, here it is. And since I figured I might not have a lot to cover with the actual urban legend, I'm also going to include at least 2 or 3 stories. So, let's get started. As you all know, Black-Eyed Children is an urban legend in which these kids, they come to your door or your car and they knock on the glass. And usually there's at least like 2 or 3 of them. They kind of roam around in packs. And at first, you don't notice anything really off about them. And they're asking, you know, can I come into your house? I'm hungry. Can I come into your house? I need to call my parents. Can I come into your house? Can I get a ride home? I'm lost. I'm scared. They appeal to your instinct to protect children, especially younger ones. And what's weird though is when you encounter them, instead of feeling sympathy and wanting to help them, your fight or flight instincts take over and you feel fear. And you don't know what it is quite yet, and you're like, no, you can't come in my house. Sorry, no, you can't, I can't give you a ride. And they get more and more insistent. And it's usually by the time they get more and more insistent that you notice their eyes are completely black. It's also around this time you notice that you just can't help but open the door a little bit. It's almost like they have mind control abilities telling you to open the door and let them in. Now, there have been stories where people slam the door and they sit there and bang on the door all night long. Let us in, let us in. See what the internet has to say. The interwebs. Black-eyed children, or black-eyed kids, is an urban legend of supposed paranormal creatures that resemble children between the ages of 6 to 16, with pale skin and black eyes, who are reportedly seen hitchhiking or panhandling or encountered on doorsteps of residential homes. Tales of black-eyed children have appeared in pop culture since the late 1990s. So this is a relatively new urban legend, new phenomenon. The supposed origin of the legend are 99 postings written by Texas reporter Brian Bethel of Ghost-Related Mailing List, relating alleged encounters with black-eyed children in Abal, Texas, and Portland, Oregon, called Classic Examples of Creepypasta. Bethel's stories gained such popularity that he published frequently asked questions just to keep up with the demand for more info of the new urban legend. In 2012, Brian Bethel told his story on reality television series Monsters and Mysteries in America. He wrote a follow-up article in Albany Reporter News describing his experience. So, not only is it relatively new, it started on the internet. So I guess it's kind of like Slender Man, who started on the internet. But there are so many stories and encounters of these children. It's just so creepy and weird. Like, I'm going to at least read 2 or 3 stories for you guys. Story number 1, Midnight Caller. It almost felt like a dream. I woke up to my dog Lucy barking. She was upright on the bed where my husband and I were sleeping with our 22-month-old daughter, staring at our door like an unknown stranger was out there rummaging around. I thought she was just freaking out over house noise. We'd only had her for 3 months. She was still a puppy. It could have been anything. Our roommate, a creak of the house settling, the awnings moving outside in the breeze. I wasn't too concerned initially. I decided the best bet would be to open the door and show her nothing was there. It sounds a bit silly, but it's what we did. It's what we But it's what we do with our daughter when she gets scared. And I figured it should work with a puppy. I opened the door. She raced to the front door. She stood there, snarling at the door. It was an angry, violent growl, one I had never heard her make before. I looked groggily at her and opened my baby gate, blocking the doorway, planning to open the door to show her everything was okay. The second my hand reached for the deadbolt, Lucy went wild. She started barking and jumping towards me, and when I touched the metal, she suddenly changed her temper. She whimpered, almost like she was afraid, and backing down. As her mannerism changed, so did mine. I wasn't calm anymore. My heart was racing and sinking at the same time. I had been flooded with a mixture of fear and dread. I looked through the peephole. I can't explain why I looked, but I did. Outside were two kids. One just a smidgen older than me. He didn't look much younger. I'm 21. He had to be 16 or 17. She was slender, pale. Her hair was a light shade of honey blonde. She wore it long, around mid-back, with long, thin, blunt bangs in front that covered most of her eyes. She wore jeans, a light wash that's popular right now, and a thin olive-colored pullover-style hoodie. She held the hand of a small girl, who looked to be about 3 or 4, in the same style of jeans and a button-down ivory cardigan. The smaller one looked at the floor shyly, but had the same shade of hair tied back in a ponytail. She held a stuffed toy under her free arm, and it was identical to the one my daughter has, as was their style of dress. Had it not been for the feeling of overwhelming dread and fear, I probably would have asked these kids in and given them some tea or hot chocolate to get them out of the bitter cold. Something about them seemed off. At this point, I hadn't made any noise. I hadn't shushed the dog or grumbled, nothing. I hadn't turned on any lights. These kids had no indication I was at the door. The older one spoke. She had a voice that was mature, confident, strong, accentless. She held her head tilted downward, and I couldn't see her eyes. She said, We have to use your phone." I stood, frozen in fear. How did she know I was there? She raised her head to face me directly, and that was when I saw her eyes. There was a reason I couldn't see them through her bangs before. They were black. They were otherworldly. She said, "Our mother is worried." As someone who has always been interested in creepy stories, I knew what she was the second she looked at me through the door. I have never seen one to believe in these things. As a staunch atheist and skeptic when it comes to the paranormal, I have written off many ghost stories from friends and family members eager to tell their tale. I didn't believe it. Still, I couldn't rationalize my way out of this. I was standing with nothing but a thin wooden door between me and a black-eyed kid. There was no questioning what was right in front of me. I did not answer her. She slowly and silently backed away from the door, Lucy still cowering at my ankles. She kept talking. "Just let us in to use your phone." I took another step back, and with that step, the tone changed. At first, she seemed polite. When I took that second step back, she became commanding, almost hostile. "We're not going to hurt you. If we wanted to do that, we would have broken in. I'll ask again. May we come in and use your phone?" Lucy snarled at the door, and I inched backward, though something inside me seemed to be slowly pulling me back towards the door. I'm sorry, I'm still, kind of sick. I've been sick for, the past 3 days. Back towards the door. It wasn't a physical pulling so much as a subconscious need to go back and let them in. I got to my room, covered up my window, locked the door, and sat there in a dim light of the nightlight. I heard her call me back to the door once more. And then quiet. I didn't go back to sleep that night, and I haven't slept right since. I heard from reading about them that the black-eyed kids can't just come in without permission. I know they haven't hurt anyone, but I still fear I'll be the exception. When I told my husband, he said it was just a dream. He keeps telling me to forget it. But this lingering feeling of sadness, this dread, when the house is silent at night, this fear of a knock at the door, this tells me otherwise. Story number 2. Halloween. This is so funny. I've never heard of the black-eyed kids before my incident. So I came on here to post my story, and the first story I see is about black-eyed kids. Weird. Let me preface this by saying I am by no means a writer, just a domestic engineer living in North Texas. Also, I don't believe in the paranormal, ghosts, demons, aliens, whatever. However, I did have an event happen to me this Halloween, I have to admit, has me scratching my head. This is my first post on Reddit, and sorry to say, I never even heard about it until yesterday. I told my best friends about this incident, and she's an avid reader of No Sleep, and she told me if I didn't post it, she would. So, here I am. Anyway, I hope you like. So, it had to be a slow trick-or-treat night in our neighborhood that evening, which was pretty odd in itself. We usually have kids from different areas dropped off in ours, and have a constant parade at our door. That night, I'd say we had no more than 8 to 10 groups of kids come by the entire night. It was about 9:30 p.m., and my husband and I were sitting in our family room watching some of these ghost stories based on, supposedly, actual events. Like I said, I don't believe in any of that stuff, but I do like a good ghost story every now and then, and it was Halloween after all. We hadn't any activity at the door in over half an hour, and it was getting late, so we decided to turn the porch light off and let our dog, Chloe, out of her crate. Chloe is an American bulldog, and very docile. We only put her in the crate because we're afraid she'll try it and get out to play with all the kids, and I didn't want to have to chase her after her down the street. Also, we didn't want her to scare any of the kids, because she would look a little intimidating to younger kids. So I turned the outside light off and let Chloe out, and she followed me back to the couch and lay down at my feet. Getting close to 10 p.m. when my husband decided that he had enough fun for the night, and that he was going to go upstairs to take a shower and get ready for bed. After all, it was Thursday, and he still had to get up for work the next day. My teenage son, was out with his friends at a local haunted house and wasn't expected back for another hour or so. So, that left me alone on the couch with Chloe. Now, just because I don't believe doesn't mean those shows don't freak me out a bit. And being alone now watching, I'd have to say I was kind of on edge, as it were. It wasn't long after I heard the upstairs water for the shower turn on when there came a light knock, knock, knock at the front door. My initial reaction was, what the hell, really? It's almost 10 o'clock, go home. But soon an uneasy feeling came over me. Why the knock? Our doorbell glows, and in the dark, without the porch light, it would be extra obvious to anyone. I pause. I couldn't really just ignore it. Our front door has a big, beveled glass panel, and anyone at the door could see in enough to see someone was in the family room watching TV. It would be pretty rude for me just to sit there and not answer it. Knock, knock, knock again from the door. I glanced down at Chloe, and she was gone. My gaze followed her usual path in front of the door, expecting her to be on her way there as she normally does. Nothing. She wasn't there. I stood up to look around the room better to find her crouching behind the back door, like she was wanting out. However, she never asked to go out like that. She always comes and licks my hand or puts her head on my knee. It was totally out of character for her. And I have to say, it heightened my anxiety. "Chloe, crate," I said. She turned back to look at me like, "Hell no, lady, I ain't moving." I yelled up to my husband, but if he was already in the shower, I knew there was no chance of him hearing me. Knock, knock, knock. About that time, a car drove down the street and cast just enough light at the door to which I could see the silhouettes of two small children through the glass. I instantly felt relief. It was just some kids. Probably a couple from my neighbors on their way back home, and they wanted to stop by and show me their costume or something. I headed to the door and looked back to make sure Chloe wasn't going to follow. What a great watchdog, I thought to myself as she just sat there. I turned on the porch light. When I got to the door, sure enough, I could see through the glass, and it was a couple of pretty small kids. A little late for such young ones, I thought, and I began to wonder about what kind of parents would let their kids run around the streets late at night. I only opened the door enough to where I could block Chloe's escape if she decided to grow some balls, which was only about 2 feet. What struck me immediately as odd was the kids weren't wearing any costumes. They were in normal street clothes. Also, no customary trick-or-treat either. It was a girl and a boy. The girl to my left was older, I'd say about 11 or 12. I could tell she was blonde, but I couldn't make out any distinct features, as our lights are from high above and on the columns in front of the porch, so most of the light was coming from behind them. I had not opened the door wide enough for any light from inside to hit them directly. The boy was younger, and about a foot shorter, I'd say about 8 or 9. He looked to have light brown hair. The girl very politely spoke up. "Ma'am, can we please come inside and use your phone to call our mom?" As she spoke, something in the pit of my stomach was telling me something was wrong. What kid, even at that age, doesn't have a cell phone these days? I couldn't remember the last time I hadn't had anybody ask to use my home phone. Hun, don't you have a phone of your own you could call your mom on?" I asked. This was when things really got weird. Both kids turned to look at each other like they were going to say something to one another, but neither spoke. They both turned back to me, and the girl said, "Ma'am, my cell phone battery doesn't have any charge left in it. Can we please come inside and call our mother? We're alone out here, and my brother is scared." I have to admit, they were two competing feelings going on inside me. The first was a mother's heart that wanted to help the two small children get to their mom. The other was a sinking fear in my gut that was keeping the other feeling at bay. It was when I noticed that during the short conversation I'd already opened the door an extra few inches, which I was completely unaware of doing. I stopped. "Honey, why don't you give me your mom's number and I can call her myself?" Another pause, and they again looked at one another. After a short moment, they turned back to me and the girl said, "Ma'am, my little brother has to use the bathroom. Can we please come inside while you call our mom?" And with that last statement, the little girl moved closer towards the door like she was just going to walk in by me. As she did, she stepped into the light coming from inside the house, and I got my first real good look at her. Solid, jet black eyes. That's all I could see. The motherly instinct was gone and replaced by terror. I don't think I ever felt like that in my entire life. I could feel every hair on my arms and the back of my neck standing at attention. I closed the door to where just my face was able to stick out. The little girl stopped and again pleaded, "Please, ma'am, we're really scared and alone out here. We have to come inside. Please help us." Then, like on cue, both kids began to whimper and cry. That's when the fear took over and I shut and locked the door. "I'll call your mom if you give me the number," I shouted through the door, "but I'm not letting you in the house." I could still see them stand there on the porch, just staring at me through the beveled glass pane. Part of me wanted to run upstairs to my husband, but the bigger part didn't want to lose track of where they were. They would have freaked me out even more not to know where they were. After what seemed like forever, but probably only a few seconds, I decided I'd call my neighbor that lives across the street. As I made my way to the side table by our couch to my phone, I glanced back at the door. Chloe was nowhere to be found. We later found her in the guest room under the bed. When I got to my phone and started to look for his contact info, it was only then the kids stepped away from the door and began to walk to the street. As they did, I walked to the door to get a better look to see where they went, still not calling my neighbor. if I get close enough to the glass, you can see out enough to make out people's shapes. But you can see much detail. Of course, standing that close to the door would make you pretty obvious to anyone looking in. From the door, I could see the kids were still standing under the street lamp nearest my house, staring at me. It's creepy. As I lifted the phone to my ear after calling, only then did the kids start walking down the street. I met my neighbor under the lamp once he was out there, but the kids were nowhere to be found. Like I said, I don't believe in any of this stuff, and have never even heard about black-eyed kids before, talking to my friend. What I really think, what I have to think, is these kids were just out yanking people's chains on Halloween night. But I will say this for them, they were good at it. Really good at it. They scared the S out of me, and my dog. There you have it, guys. I don't know, whenever I read these stories, my hair stands up on end. If there is such a thing as black-eyed kids, I really hope to never meet them. You guys tell me, like, do you guys believe in black-eyed kids? Or do you think it's just a creepypasta? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like up this video, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to follow me on social media. Alright, pandas? Love you. See you later.